Hi, I'm Matt Hernandez, and this is Book Chat with You. In this podcast, I do my best to make every episode be a conversation with you, so that way it's about us, conversing back and forth. Maybe a lot of outlets want to tell you, what you should think, what you should do, how you should feel. Their advice might be great and wonderful, and I'm not necessarily trying to critique any of that, but it would be nice to have a space where we might chat together, where your opinion matters as well. So today we're still looking at the short story collection, Collected Stories by Carol Shields. I'll show a picture of her and the book here. And so today we're looking at the short story Words. Now, this story deals a bit with climate change or global warming. I'm glad, in a sense, like so many stories, that though it seems like it might be about global warming, it's not. Just like a boxing movie might not be about boxing, it might be about, overcoming whatever other challenges of oneself. It might actually be a love story. It might actually be a story about one with one's own trainer or something else. And I'm a bit glad that's a bit what's going on here, because though it mentions two conferences about global warming in this short story, um, it's about the relationship of two characters, Ian and Isabel. So, uh, Ian seems to be a native English speaker, and his wife seems to be a native Spanish speaker. And they met at a conference. They couldn't communicate too well together, but they figured it out. They got married, had kids. 10 years later, they go to another conference. So at the second conference, Ian, he goes to give a speech. Now, whenever he goes to give his speech, he becomes so enthralled at the moment. It's supposed to only be about 2 minutes long. Everybody stays within time. He doesn't. Whenever he doesn't stay in time, he uh he's captivating the entire audience. Then at some point during that, he says, "And I vow to have I don't know, a vow of silence until this issue is one day resolved." This infuriates his wife, confuses his children, and it creates a big schism in their marriage. And it goes to such a point that Ian kind of forgets how, like, language works. He kind of forgets words. I mean, he seems to use things. He seems to have his way about going about life, but the spoken word, like, quits meaning anything to him after a while. And I do feel that, could this happen? Is this a thing? I mean, people might forget a language after a while, might become rusty at it. And these things certainly are possibilities for somebody's second or third language. But to do a whole vow of silence to such a point, I mean, a few days ago, when my children, I took them to a play place and I was listening to, on YouTube and stuff, some stuff with Carol Shields, maybe like an event that was hosted on her behalf. And I mean, where does some of this stuff veer into fantasy? But I mean, it does say a lot about what the spoken word is. I mean, you fall in love with somebody who, I guess, English would be their second language. And so, it's funny about communicating there. It's funny that everybody has a set amount of time to speak. And so everybody's pretty measured with their words. One guy who speaks too long can never speak again because he made an off the cuff vow, and then some stubbornness kept him to it until he forgot how to speak. I mean, that would all be quite interesting, right? I don't know. I don't know. I think I saw one, like a Japanese husband and wife. They didn't speak for so many years whenever the husband got mad at his wife, and then he kind of just regretted it. And I don't know. Is it like if children were like raised by an animal for such a time that they can never be able to speak? Or I did the story An Island of Dolphins. I made a book review video of that one a while back, and um the woman, it was based on a real person. She never learned the language when she was brought from an island, like, off the coast of California or whatever, and she just never learned the language of, any of the peoples who lived in California, whether, you know, um, English or anything else. So, one more reason to try to read the pages on these as well is because if I start losing myself in whatever rambling, and I'm trying to find ways that I can try to ask you a question and anticipate one back, and whatever questions you might ask, and how we can converse about these stories. If I begin to lose myself in some of that, maybe I could just read a page, as I typically do, and that might jot my memory for another thing or two to say. So here, I'm going to read here on page, well, really, I'm going to primarily read page 90, but I'm going to start from the bottom of page 89 and then end on the top of page 91. Wasteful antiphonic Wasteful antiphonic structures were actually on the increase in the more heavily populated regions, as was the use of elaborate ceremonial metaphor. It was as if, though, by refusing to make linguistic sacrifices, the human race had willed its own destruction. When he finished speaking, the applause was too prolonged and powerful. It perhaps held an element of shame, too. This young man had found the courage to say at last what he should have said long before. One after another, the delegates rose to their feet, and soon their clapping fell into a steady, rhythmic beat that had the effect of holding Ian hostage on the platform. The chairman whispered into his ear, begging him for a few additional words. He asserted not, uh, he could not say no. And in a fever that was remarkably similar to the fever he had suffered as a child during a severe case of measles, or like the fever of love he had succumbed to 10 years ago in Rome, he announced to the audience, holding up a hand for attention, that he would be the first to take a vow of complete silence for the sake of the planet that had fathered him. Almost at once he regretted his words, but hubris kept him from recanting for the first 24 hours, and after that a kind of stubbornness took over. Isabel met him at the airport with the words, "You went too far." Later, after a miserable, silent attempt at lovemaking, she said, "I'll never forgive you." His children, clamoring to hear about his moment of heroism, poked at him, at his face and chest and arms, as though he were inert. He tried to tell them with his eyes that he was still their father and he still loved them. "Leave him alone," Isabel said sharply. "He might as well be a stranger to us now. He's no different than anyone else." He became loud and shrewish, for his silent followers arrived at their door, and in time there were thousands of them, each with the same blank face and gold armband. She admitted them with bad grace. She grew garrulous. She rambled on, bitter and blaming, sometimes incoherent, sometimes obscene, sometimes reverting to a coarse, primitive schoolyard Spanish, sometimes shouting to herself or cursing into the mirror or chanting oaths. Anything to furnish the emptiness of the house with words. Yeah, I'd like to hear your opinion about some of that. I imagine her feelings are completely natural, but what other attempt could we use? Would a vow of silence be something practical to do, practical to use? I I don't know. I don't know. I don't see in any way how that could work. In fact, it is quite funny because though I might be struggling and in a way to come up with plenty of things for us to discuss, it does remind me about this whole reason why I want to take on this whole endeavor. Because I do believe that we can try to talk more about what we believe in. And when yesterday I got a bit more brave on social media to say that I have this podcast and how important that might be, um, it's kind of nice because I've been so embarrassed my whole life or shy something to say what I might feel in a forum using my real name and stuff. And just feel afraid that I can't take back what I said later on. Not that I say anything wrong or something, but I mean, just how people might react at a later time. But what would it mean then? It mean being the opposite of Ian here. What do you think of this? I mean, the next story quite nicely, and I took a few notes for the next story that I will try to make a video for tonight and edit these together and piece it together and put it online. But the next story has some elements about this too. And I do believe that with conversation, maybe more people can read. And I'm not reading a lot. I mean, it takes time to read this and put this together, but I would certainly like to hear what you have to say. And I think the world needs a lot more of that. But the only way that I can do that, I believe, is to try to stay away from controversial topics, at least for a long time, to try to build an audience and that we can use stories to talk through various things. But without that communication, I don't know, it's all quite interesting, right? But what do you think? Maybe at times some stories give me more to pose questions to you, and maybe at times they don't. But this video has been long enough, so I'd love to hear from you. Look below for how we can chat one day. Bye.